Either don't attempt it or carry it through to the end. Either don't attempt it or carry it through to the end. Ovid. To go too far is as bad as falling too short. To go too far is as bad. To go too far is as bad as to fall short. Confucius. Jack Dempsey, when he punches people, he's not aiming for their chin or their jaw or their. He's aiming for the dude's back of the head. To conquer is nothing. One must profit from one's success. Life is an everlasting war against man's wickedness and criminality. Life is an everlasting war against man's wickedness and criminality. We're talking about Abraham Lincoln here. And the conspiracy. There was a little conspiracy. You can have a lone nut, but there's always a little conspiracy. So far, that's what we figured out. And if you can't see goodness in a good person, well, shit, you got some major fucking issues. I guess you're wicked as fuck, huh? Well, if you can't see goodness in a good person, John Frederick Parker went AWOL. So there's a lot of questions, okay? John Wilkes Booth only had one gun and one bullet. Why did John Wilkes Booth think that one gun and one bullet could take Abraham Lincoln out? Where was John Frederick Parker? How come U.S. Grant and Edwin Stanton weren't there at the theater with Abraham Lincoln? Julia Grant and Mary Todd Lincoln didn't get along. Mary Todd Lincoln, I heard that she had like these fucking meetings and there was like secret Confederates and shit. Was it something Mary Todd said? Did Mary Todd give the information out? That one fucking guy, Carl Schurz, says that he got more state secrets in one night with Mary Todd than all the time in Washington. All he did was just talk to her for one night. Got all the state secrets. But Mary Todd Lincoln and Julia Grant just can't get along. Why not? Why can't Julia Grant, Mary Todd Lincoln? Mary Todd, I just need you to be, just smile and be beautiful and just, don't be terrible. Abraham Lincoln once spanked Mary Todd. Get in the house, Mary Todd. But because Mary Todd Lincoln and Julia Grant don't get along, I bet you that had something to do with U.S. Grant not being there that day. Edwin Stanton, U.S. Grant, and then John Frederick Parker. Nobody was there. There was like 50 random bodyguards, but they didn't have a Secret Service back in them days. Major Henry Rathbone was there, and Major Henry Rathbone did fight with John Wilkes Booth. He's the only one that showed any resistance whatsoever. John Wilkes Booth came, shot Lincoln in the head. Lincoln pretty much dies right then and there. Henry Rathbone jumps up and tries to attack John Wilkes Booth. John Wilkes Booth stabs him with his knife. And then he jumps off the balcony, tripping, falling, and almost breaks his leg. And then Sic Semper Tyrannis, he thrusts a bloody knife up into the air. Always the showman. I believe that all that happened because that was at the theater. There's like 20 people that was at the theater. The oldest living person that, was there at the theater. He still remembered it. He said he went home and got shot 30 times because he just kept thinking of Lincoln. He said he saw Lincoln's body slumped over. So why, John Wilkes Booth? Why? Your ego, the lost fucking cause, racism, sour grapes, you sore loser, piece of shit. And he did fuck shit up. A lot of people will say, well, he made a martyr out of him, and then, no, it fucked shit up. He was actually more conciliatory to the fucking Confederates. Abraham Lincoln was a friend to the Confederates. He looked at the Confederates as his brothers. And after the war, he says, now we are family. Now we are back to being family again. But Lee had just surrendered. Richmond fell. Richmond, the capital. Jefferson Davis was on the run. Lee just surrendered. It looked like the end was near. So John Wilkes Booth stepped up to the fucking plate. George Atzerodt was at the Kirkwood Hotel. This was a conspiracy. It was a small conspiracy. 3 people were supposed to kill 3 different politicians. The Secretary of State was to get killed, the Vice President, and the President was supposed to be killed. George Atzerodt was at the Kirkwood Hotel because Andrew Johnson was at the Kirkwood Hotel. And he was at Suite 68. So we knew what room number of the hotel he was at. Kirkwood Hotel, Suite 68, George Atzerodt. Now, the story that I heard with Atzerodt was that he signed up to kidnap, but he got cold feet. He didn't want to kill. He didn't know if the president got killed. Why is he going to kill the vice president? The president got killed. Then George Atzerodt just took 2 shots and then walked away. And then he took his knife. George Atzerodt had a knife and he threw the knife into the gutter. And somebody saw him do that and they reported it. And then that's how they catch up to George Atzerodt. John Wilkes Booth talked to the Ford. It was at the Ford's theater, right? So Harry Ford, where did he get the information? How did he know that Lincoln was going to be there? Maybe he just knew the Fords. He was an actor. He was in that theater in and out all the time. Abraham Lincoln, it looks to me like he gets killed almost immediately. He's barely breathing, barely living, barely hanging on. And when he dies, Mary Todd was like, how come you all didn't tell me he was near death? As if it was a possibility that he could, be revived and he could be alive again. You saw him get shot and he slumped right over and his eyes were closed, Mary Todd, right there in front of you. Mary Todd was tickling him and, being a flirty little hussy, being a little flirty hussy. And she's like, oh my gosh, what are the Rathbones going to think of me tickling you like this? So she was loose lips, sink ships, got him distracted. He's looking off to the side. He didn't even know John Wilkes Booth was there. And I like to think he didn't even feel any pain, but if he stayed alive for the next 9 hours, then that might have been the most painful shit in the fucking world. Lewis Powell got hung and he fucking struggled for like 30 minutes. He didn't want to die. He didn't want to get hung and killed. So the other three, apparently their necks snapped right away, but Lewis Powell, he just kept on dangling and fighting and dangling, but his weight, right, he got 200 pounds, and the noose just gets tighter and tighter, and even if your neck doesn't snap, it'll cut your windpipe off, and you just won't breathe. You'll die of not breathing. What do they call that? Asphyxiation. They both went to the Star Saloon. John Frederick Parker went to the Star Saloon, and so did John Wilkes Booth. John Frederick Parker, we're supposed to believe that he just drifted out to watch the play, then drifted to the bar to watch the bar, then fell asleep, came back later on, and then eventually John Frederick Parker is actually going to look over Mary Todd Lincoln, and Mary Todd says, aren't you the one responsible for my husband's death? Why don't you get out? Out! But he did actually defend himself, which is interesting. I guess liars can easily lie, right? He never got charged with it. Dereliction of duty. If John Frederick Parker was sitting there at the booth, Abraham Lincoln would still definitely be alive. If U.S. Grant or Edwin was there too, or if they had a man there too, all they needed was one man, but the one man that was there wandered off or was paid to go, who knows? Why not have 2 men, maybe 3 men? 7 p.m. is when John Frederick Parker arrives. He was actually supposed to be there like 3 or 4. 9 p.m. is when Abraham Lincoln arrives. And then 10 p.m. is when John Wilkes Booth arrives. So Parker was there a couple hours, but he's getting, drunk. He's drinking at the Star Saloon. John Wilkes Booth is trying to get the nerve. And Parker is just bored, I guess. And then did they run into each other? Did they know each other? How? It seems very coincidental. They both were drinking at the Star Saloon. It was next door to the Ford's Theater. Parker drank. Let's see. Abe slumps over. Abe's valet. So Parker apparently went to drink with Abe's valet and coachman. So Abraham Lincoln was driven to the theater. Who was his valet? Who was his coachman? John Frederick Parker drank with valet and coachman. So it's possible they could have never met each other. I've never heard any report that actually said that they did meet each other, but just weird coincidence. So John Wilkes Booth went to the Star Saloon, came out, shot Lincoln, ran off. John Frederick Parker, he was supposed to protect Lincoln, went to the Star Saloon, didn't come back. Three years, fired. 3 years later, he was eventually fired for sleeping on the job, so that wasn't the only dereliction of duty. But that's kind of consistent with his personality. And also, he was still a goddamn police officer 3 hours later. Talk about the thin blue line. Yeah, if your one job was to make sure that the president doesn't get shot and assassinated, and then he's shot and assassinated, that's cause for termination. That's a cause for termination. That's a reason to get rid of a person. Did Parker declare or not? See if the actor... Oh, yeah. So there was John Wilkes Booth when he was at the Star Saloon. Somebody said, you'll never be the actor that your father was. And then apparently John Wilkes Booth walked out of the saloon saying, "Oh yeah, after tonight's performance, I'll be the most famous actor in the world. I'll be the most famous actor in the world until Ronald Reagan. You better what? You better believe it. You better believe all assassinations. We should compare and contrast to Abraham Lincoln. You can have a lone nut, but that lone nut had a ride. He had a ride there. He got the gun from somebody. He had somebody champion him. And then the other political party, they're always talking a bunch of shit too, so, you know, there's always a little conspiracy. Even with the lone nut, there's always some little conspiracy. They conspired with other people. They talked about it with somebody. They just conspired with themselves and they just snapped, and they was just like, you know what? Lewis Powell, he swung and fought for minutes. His neck didn't snap right away. Lewis Powell just walked right into William Seward's house, claiming to have medicine for William Seward, and then just started stabbing everybody. No, I need to show him how to use it. Fred Seward pistol whipped, so Lewis Powell went to shoot Fred Seward, and then it misfired. John Wilkes Booth had one gun, one pistol. His could have misfired. And then after Lewis Powell's gun misfires, then he pistol whips Fred Seward and really damages his brain, like really damages it. He's like all bloodied and unconscious. Mock execution, right? Almost killed the guy. And he took the Bowie knife. He had a Bowie knife, and he's just stabbing at William Seward. And he stabs into his face and his cheek, but he misses the jugular. He didn't get the jugular. John Wilkes Booth, we're going to find pictures of 5 actresses in his pocket. So nobody protected Abraham Lincoln that night. None of Grant's men, none of the police, not Stanton, not the Secret Service. I don't think there was a Secret Service. There's a Crook. A guy named Crook was like his main guy. Parker. None of the people. He was by himself. All assassinations should look to Lincoln and compare and contrast. It's been a long time. You might still be... I'm still a little mad about the damn thing, but... none of the higher-ups got in any trouble, right? There was a small conspiracy. One lone nut apparently can get to the president with a small conspiracy. And you should look at the cheerleaders, the employers, the friends, the neighbors. Somebody saw something. Jesus Christ. You know? Who'd you go? Where'd you go? Who's that person? What do you... How did John Wilkes Booth, how was he able to run away for 11 days? 11 days! He killed the president and was able to live for 11 days. Well, shit, is he the president now? April 14th, 1012. It was on Good Friday. Isn't that interesting? John Wilkes Booth murdered Abraham Lincoln on Good Friday. Do you not understand the implication? Jesus was killed on Good Friday. You killed Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln is like one of the closest Jesus figures. Him, Martin Luther King, Fred Hampton. How come Mary Todd didn't do shit? And then Mary Todd and Parker were related? Mary Todd Lincoln and John Frederick Parker, they had some sort of relation, they were cousins or some shit? So was it Mary Todd? Loose lips sink ships. She was doing those summonings. She had those weird fucking religious cult, or her Tad had died. John Wilkes Booth was there at the hanging of John Brown. Quinine. Apparently quinine. He was able to get quinine from somewhere. Malaria, quinine. Dr. Samuel Mudd, John Surratt Jr. Mary Surratt gets hung. The son, John Surratt Jr., runs up to Canada. And then when he comes back, the jury doesn't convict him. And then Andrew Johnson pardons a bunch of these fuckers. John Wilkes Booth was a racist piece of shit. He believed in slavery. He hated black folks. He thought that white people were superior to black folks. And he thought that white America should always prevail forever and ever. A lot of the people in America today hate Abraham Lincoln because he freed the black folks. So if you're a racist piece of shit, you would say that you hated the great man Abraham Lincoln to let your other racist pieces of shit know that you're a racist bastard. Adam Sandler How big of an ego does Adam Sandler or Tom Hanks have? We need to check these egos of these actors. I like South Park, Team America, Sean Penn. We're guards. Oh, we're guards. No, we're guards. You're just an actor there, Bucky O'Hare. You're just an actor. So John Brown, Abraham Lincoln, pretty much birds of a feather, right? John Brown did what Abraham Lincoln did what John Brown did, only by a much bigger. John Brown and Nat Turner were probably the spirit animals of Abraham Lincoln, freeing the black man forever. Yeah, that's what he was pissed off. John Wilkes Booth was sad about having a racist America, a racist segregated America, with black folks being the slave to the white folks. He thought it was a nail in the coffin. He thought it was the end of the end. But that's the genie out of the bottle. Once you let the genie out of the... Guess what? The black man is a human. He's the same as you, white man. There's no fucking difference. Once you let that genie out of the bottle, you can't put that back in. You're going to go back to the days of slavery. No, that's Napoleon. Napoleon tried to do that shit. And that's how I know Napoleon's a fucking bitch-ass piece of shit. It helps with the optics, too. You shut Abraham Lincoln up, and now there's no president, right? Now it's Andrew Johnson, the fucking Union Democrat, and Jefferson Davis is still alive. So that means the Southern cause, you still got to capture Jefferson Davis, and then all the assassinators, right? All the assassins are still alive, too. So that makes sense to me. It didn't need to be part of a bigger fucking thing, but could John Wilkes Booth been a part of the payroll? Could he have been getting money from Jefferson Davis? I think so. I mean, he's a Confederate courier and a spy, so he definitely, had solidarity with those sons of bitches. Remember with Caesar, it was the senators that killed Caesar. Lewis Powell was well groomed when he showed back up to Mary Surratt's house. His hands were manicured and uncalloused. He said he was a ditch digger. He was just a layman, a workman. But the federal cops, they knew it was a lie. The feds, the federal police. Edwin Stanton went around and had a mass arrest, which, you know what, in a way that makes sense, right? The president was killed. Arrest everybody and just put them all in jail and then sort them out later. April 18th, Augustus Seward positively ID'd Lewis Powell. So, that's Lewis Powell. He did the job. David Harold and John Wilkes Booth, they went to Daniel Samuel Mudd's house together. So David Harold actually left Lewis Powell high and dry. But then John Wilkes Booth liked having a buddy with him to run around everywhere. They went to Samuel Mudd's house. They were in a barn eventually later on. David Harold's going to be like, I'm out of here. Nah, the jig is up there, John Wilkes Boothie. I'm out of here, John Wilkes Boothie. And John Wilkes Boothie is like, well, I'm going to go out like a man. And then got shot in the neck and got paralyzed. And then, I guess he went out like a man. Then that's actually, be skeptical. When anybody is sitting there saying, if you're any kind of man, then you'll do A, B, and C. If I'm any kind of man, then anybody that's coming up to me telling me what kind of man I need to be, I need to tell that motherfucker to fuck the fuck off. That's the kind of man I need to be. No, I don't need to listen to whatever you just said. To be a man, you got to be A, B, C, D, and E. That's what a real man does. That's what that fucking one of them Confederate fucking pieces of shit. He was basically a hood. I want to say it was a hood. So the Confederate hood, he was sitting there saying, any of those people that's not fucking cowards, come with me, and then they attacked or whatever. Go in the battle and fight like men, be like men. You gotta be like men. You go out there and you die for the fucking... I'm not. I'm gonna stay in here and drink some fucking tea. Drink some fucking whiskey. Smoke some goddamn motherfucking... morphine poppies, and then John Wilkes Booth goes to Samuel Cox's house. So John Wilkes Booth has friends on top of friends. Mary Surratt, Samuel Mudd, Samuel Cox. Dr. Mudd had got a local man to God, John Wilkes Booth. Gave him $25, April 16th, the next day. Samuel Cox, 4 a.m., Thomas Jones, hid them in the Zekiah swamp. So while goddamn Lewis Powell's in the fucking cemetery, John Wilkes Booth is hiding in the swamp for 5 days. John Wilkes Booth hid in the swamp with David Harold for 5 days. Thomas Jones was an intelligence officer for the Confederates. That's interesting. Oh, I'm an intelligence officer. Oh, you're like the CIA and the FBI. You're like Intelligence makes it sound smart. It sounds like you're the smart cops. Oh, so you're the cops, but you're the ones who are intelligent. Not like these fucking idiot layman cops. So it seems like you should always want to go into intelligence. If you're even a layman cop, I'm an intelligent layman cop. Intelligent. No, I'm an intelligent deputy. I'm an intelligent. Period. They both drank at the same tavern. They could have told him to bug off. They could have gave him some coins. He went drunk, got to sleep. So if we assume that John Frederick Parker is telling the truth, he got bored, wanders off. He's still a cop for several years, which, what the fuck? Who the fuck was he connected to? Thin blue line? Well, he was a police officer. Dereliction of duty, motherfucker. You need to grill the motherfucker. Talk to him. Ask him a lot of goddamn questions. Holy shit. How the fuck did he not get questioned? How did he keep his goddamn job? How did he get close to Mary Todd? After you lost the fucking job, you can't be the same. You can't work with Mary Todd ever. What the fuck? I'm not a Mary Todd fan, but I like that she told goddamn John Frederick Parker to get the fuck out. And then they crossed the Potomac into Virginia. Stanton had a manhunt, $50,000 bounty for John Wilkes Booth, $25,000 bounty for John Surratt and David Harold. There was a mile-long funeral procession to see Abe's body. 7 abreast and a mile long is what they said. So 7 wide and a mile long is how many people went to see Abraham Lincoln's body. April 21st, this is 6 days after Abraham Lincoln has been assassinated. John Wilkes Booth is still alive. David Harold is on the move. They shot 2 horses. They went to a riverside, shot 2 horses because they didn't want the horses, I guess, to cause a scene. But having 2 dead shot horses is pretty fucking, that's pretty weird. Thomas Jones, he was in a small boat. Thomas Jones against the intelligent officer Confederate takes a small boat. And then they go back to the Potomac River and they went upriver and they accidentally went back to Maryland. So shit. John Wilkes Booth is trying to get away, and he's got all these friends, and he's got this, like an underground fucking railroad underground, a reverse railroad underground. Colonel John Hughes' house, so he goes to Colonel Hughes, and then Thomas Harbin, William Bryant. Look at all these fucking conspirators, all these motherfuckers that helped John Wilkes Booth get away. William Bryant gave them brand new horses, so I guess more horses for them to shoot. April 24th. I guess this is when they're going to catch him, and then he's going to die on the 26th. So they catch John Wilkes Booth nearly 10 days later, and then 12 days later, John Wilkes Booth is going to die. So April 24th, you got William Jett, David Harold, and John Wilkes Booth. William Jett takes David Harold and John Wilkes Booth to Richard Garrett's farm. And at Richard Garrett's farm, they're in a tobacco barn. The 9th Virginia Cavalry, William Jett, was part of the Confederacy, so he's a Confederate soldier. So more Confederates, right? So, is it that shocking that you'd have a little conspiracy with all these Confederate fucks? You're at war. 26 Union soldiers from the 16th New York Cavalry Regiment went down the Potomac River. 26 Union soldiers from the 16th New York Cavalry Regiment went down the Potomac River, commanded by Edward P. Doherty, and Everton Conger was with him. So I heard that was actually Jefferson Davis. You had 150 people and 400 men. And then when they caught Jefferson Davis, there was friendly fire. 2 federal Union officers are going to get shot and killed. When they caught Jefferson Davis, none of the Confederates shot a damn fucking shot. They just had 500 fucking people. 500 people descend upon Jefferson Davis, and Jefferson Davis had his little skirt. Jefferson Davis was wearing makeup. He was pretending to be a woman so he could just kind of, walk by them without being noticed, or, oh, that's just an old widow. Belle Plaine, Virginia. Eventually, the feds get to William Jett. And because the feds got to William Jett, they fucking, beat him up or something, tortured him. Somehow they got the information out of William Jett. John Wilkes Booth was at Richard Garrett's farm. David Harold and John Wilkes Booth was at Richard Garrett's farm. April 24th. So this is going to be when John Wilkes Booth gets shot in the neck. He's going to get paralyzed. He's not going to die until 2 days later. But David Harold gives himself up. Somebody took a kerosene lamp and they tossed it to the barn. So David Harold gives himself up. They're both in the tobacco barn. One of the federal troops takes a kerosene lamp that was on Garrett's porch, Richard Garrett's porch, and he takes the kerosene lamp and he tosses it on the tobacco barn. And the tobacco barn catches on fire. And then the person that kills, or I guess eventually kills John Wilkes Booth, but paralyzes him, the person who shoots John Wilkes Booth in the neck was Boston Corbett. Boston Corbett. Now we had somebody here. Was that a Corbett earlier? We mentioned another name. I feel like there was a Corbett or something earlier. I don't know. Okay, so they shot Booth in the neck. Union soldiers retrieved the shot man out of the burning barn. So John Wilkes Booth is inside the tobacco barn. David Harold walks out. He's not shooting at him, but he's saying that he's going to fight it out with him. And so eventually one of the Union officers, I mean, we've been at war, so just burn him out. Take the kerosene lamp through the fucking thing. The tobacco barn is now burning. It's on fire. David Harold fucking left, and then John Wilkes Booth was acting like he was going to. Boston Corbett said that John Wilkes Booth had raised the gun up towards him. Yeah, right, I'm sure he did. He killed Lincoln, so I don't give a shit what the fuck happened. But when Boston Corbett shoots John Wilkes Booth, he's going to get shot in the neck. John Wilkes Booth is going to get shot in the neck. It's going to break 3 of his vertebrae, and it's going to sever his spine. John Wilkes Booth is still alive, but he's paralyzed, and he's dying, and he's going to die in 2 days. His last words are, "Tell my mother that I died for my country," and then he asked somebody to raise his hands up, and when they raised his hands up, he just said, "Useless, useless," and then he died shortly thereafter, as the useless piece of shit that he was. He was a white supremacist piece of shit, and he wanted to keep the hatred going. Instead of being a good American, he wanted to keep the hatred, ugly American to the black man as a man. They're Caucasian. I don't know if you've ever figured it out, but Abraham Lincoln was right in 1800s. The black man has been a man, and black man's the original man, so Caucasia, you came from the black man. If you're a man, whatever the black man is, you're a lesser version of the black man. You're a, not dominant, you're a recessive version of the black man. Hey, Caucasian man, you're a recessive version of the black man. You're a mutated albino. So the black man is the original human. And if he ain't a man, then what the hell are you? You're a mutated albino. If he ain't a man, then you're whatever you think he is, only mutated and recessive. April 26, 1865, John Wilkes Booth dies as dawn was breaking. And that's just like Lincoln. He dies at 7:22, so that's right at the compass. So they found on John Wilkes Booth, they found his diarrhea, or his diary. They found pictures of 5 women and a candle and a compass. Lucy Hale. That's an interesting name because Lucy Hale, apparently there's a Senator Hale. So how close was Senator Hale to Lucy Hale? John Wilkes Booth is in love with Lucy Hale. Did he do it for Senator Hale? There's another senator, Senator Conister or something. But John Wilkes Booth had a picture of Lucy Hale. The other reason why that's interesting, because it was a Hale that started Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was begun by Sarah Josepha Hale. So Sarah Josepha Hale got Lincoln to declare Thanksgiving. And then Lucy Hale was apparently the heartthrob of John Wilkes Booth. So did Lucy Hale or Mary Surratt ever say, John Wilkes Booth, no, don't. Abraham Lincoln's actually a good man. You've been a racist piece of shit your whole life, and you know you've been a racist piece of shit your whole life. Why don't you knock that shit off? Just knock it off. No, come off of it. Nah, just come off of it. Joe Johnston's army was 86,000 strong. So, in some regards, it's kind of crazy that Lee is going to surrender and then Johnston is going to surrender and all these people are going to surrender. The president just got shot, so that means the Confederates, in terms of warfare, that was a big blow to the Union, and that was a gain for. And so Jefferson Davis, basically they all give up, and it's just Jefferson Davis just running out by himself, and then eventually he gets so far away, and they say, well, we're not going to fight for the Confederacy anymore, but we just want to protect you because we didn't want you to get arrested like an average fugitive. And then they turn his back on him, and so he's the last one. Jefferson Davis is the last cheese standing. There was Kirby Smith. Edmund Kirby Smith was out in the West or something doing some shit. So John Surratt, he goes to Montreal, Canada. That's interesting. Montreal, Canada, you accept Confederates. So does Brazil. Brazil accepted a bunch of Confederates. In 1864, we had to shoot a Confederate fucking ironclad that was down there by Brazil. I guess if you're part of the Navy, it's like, you know what? Let's just colonize South America, right? The Confederates, you sons of bitches. You want to take away America? You want to take away our fucking Bill of Rights and our Constitution and our fucking democracy and our elections, you pieces of shit? Oh, John Conness. So, Senator John Conness. I want to think about the Hale and Senator Conness, because Conness is going to say something about, oh my God, if any of this stuff gets out, then we're all fucked. And then Lucy Hale was connected to the Senator Hale. And so the senators were the ones that killed Caesar. The senators were the ones that killed Caesar. And Abraham Lincoln was probably the best friend to the Confederates. Like, yeah, he fought the war, but he was for Union. So after the war was over, in order to make his stupid Union argument make sense, he was saying they're our brothers now. Now we got to accept them. They're a part of our family. Yeah, we licked them. They're conquered. But if they say they're loyal Americans... If they say they're loyal Americans, they apologize for what they are doing, and they take an oath, some kind of oath. What do they call that oath?